Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And now with Anna Giaritelli, I'm so sorry. It's early morning. My mouth did not work properly. From the Washington Examiner, who covers the interior, covered the border, and all of that would be amazing to talk about until I found out she was a victim of a crime. And not only was she a victim of a crime, but the very institutions that are supposed to take care of her didn't. Anna, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So your story, obviously, in 2020, and I read this yesterday in your tweet or your post, whatever they want you to call it now on X, and I was absolutely incensed at how you were treated in all of this. As I said to you, my people who watch my show know my whole history is law enforcement, public safety. Victims should always come first, and how they're treated, how they're handled during and after the fact, all the way through the criminal justice process. And clearly there was a failure here, but can you start us at the beginning, please?
Yeah, I'm a journalist in DC, but was there about 7 years when this happened. And let's see, I had been going to the post office. It was during COVID, and DC was pretty locked down, but Saturdays were a good chance to finally get out, run some errands. And I've been going to the post office downtown. I live next to Union Station on Capitol Hill, on the edge of Capitol Hill. And so had been going to the post office, was walking down the street, and a man lunged at me. A homeless man, turned out, a large man, so which made it even scarier. And in the process, sexually assaulted me. And through the help of others who ran over, I was able to get away from him. And that began everything.
Yeah. So, and I don't think people really grasp the how quickly your life can change in a matter of seconds when you're the victim of a crime. And fortunately for you, there were good people nearby that were able to come to your aid, and you mentioned that. And obviously, I think you still keep in touch with one of them who was a hero for you that day and stepped up. So then naturally the process starts. The police show up, you give your description. It sounds like the line officers were great in how they handled it. I'm assuming the detectives were great. Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as I said where he touched me and what he did, they immediately called in an SVU, or the equivalent detective. They brought in a dog. They taped off a number of blocks. They were trying to trace everything. So yeah, the police on the ground were great. And I found out at sentencing 2 years later, they can't share this with you in the process. These police were already looking for the man who attacked me before he attacked me, because he ended up being the same assailant who had attacked an off-duty female police officer before he attacked me and gotten away. So when I'm describing them and what happened, I don't know this. They can't tell me.
They already knew.
They're like, we know this guy, which I'm saying now, and it actually gave me chills.
Yeah. And so it's incredible to think that they're sitting there and they're like, oh, this happened again. And, obviously as a victim, you're not going to know this. And at that point, your brain is probably a million other places where you're just trying to understand what just happened and going through all of the.
I was like, am I going to get to the post office after this? Like you don't realize what happened. I was the one with everyone standing around me, and I was like, do we need to call the police? Is this a police thing? It doesn't register. I'm sorry, you were speaking. It's just,
no,
you're right. Your brain is like, but what am I going to have for lunch later? And they're going to take my clothes. This is my favorite sweatshirt, but I also never want to see it again. So
yeah, when victims get into you get into fight or flight, right? And when your adrenaline dumps, and there's a reason why law enforcement, we train thousands of times for on the same thing over and over again. How to draw your weapon, how to draw one of your impact tools, whatever. Because when you hit fight or flight, your instinct takes over. Yeah. When that doesn't happen a lot, it's hard you get that tunnel focus. You're only hearing what you want to hear. And your brain starts going in a million different directions because you've just had the most frightening experience in your life, and you have zero, nor should anybody have to train for that, but you have zero train, your brain has zero training on how to mitigate that and how to function. So that's got to be, I can't even imagine. um so the police came. This guy was also, between the time that you were attacked and the time he actually was convicted, he was arrested 5 more times
Mhm.
and then allowed to walk free. Is that correct?
It was so this happened the first half of 2020. I don't like giving dates because people I've even on Twitter are like trying to dig into this and prove it wrong. And it's just like, I'm coming forward with my story. I posted something from the U.S. Attorney's Office saying your guy has been, sentenced. Like, this is true. Everyone in my life knows this has happened. And it's like, there's still things I want private.
Naturally.
Yeah. So anyway, he was arrested 5 more times on various offenses.
Other felonies too, I think.
I think they were all ended up being misdemeanors in the end. Yeah.
Right, but they were felonies that were dumped down.
They were 7 charges that got bundled together in sentencing. So even when people say, well, what was the sentence? I'm like, it was about 1.5 years for me, the cop, these other things. But he was exposing himself to a Supreme Court staffer because the Supreme Court is across from the Capitol.
Right.
He violated the restraining order. So this attack happened a block from my apartment. He was told not to go back there. And inconveniently for him, he lived in a tunnel very close by. So I'm shocked police actually enforced that and arrested him for that.
Good.
Yeah. And then the third time that I know of, I forget the other 2 charges, but he was caught with a machete in public. So, and we don't know because he got away that day. Was this a, did he have the machete on him? Did he have a firearm on him? We don't know. A knife.
Right. And you also don't know how many other crimes he's committed that either they weren't able to make that connection or the victim never called the police, because you even said you had that mentality, and this is common with a lot of victims of, well, do we even call the police for this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if that one person who doesn't like cops or that family member who's also scared says, well, no, we don't want to get involved in all that.
Yeah.
So you don't know how many other instances this animal had prior to being arrested and prior to yours as well. So at some point you started doing what I think most victims end up being forced to do, which is some of your own homework on the reporting, making sure, and I'm sure being a journalist, your brain was like, I got to make sure everything is being done the right way. And you discovered that the DC Police Administration were somehow not reporting your crime on their statistics. Is that correct?
Yeah. So as a journalist, I work with federal law enforcement at the border and immigration specifically. So I know general policing probably better than the public. I hope better than the public.
I would hope so too.
So I mean, when I was moving across town, I wanted to live in a different part of town, a little easier to access things like shopping and such. I moved from a little north of Georgetown, a really good area, to next to Union Station. And I knew there were certain areas that were like less ideal. And so I looked at the police map, and it shows you block by block, color by color, like better block, more crime, So
Right.
When I was looking at apartments, I looked at that map, and that was how I chose where I was going to live. I chose Station House Apartments, which I'll tell everyone now. And so it's on 2nd Street Northeast. And so all this happens. I'm still, when I go back to work, I took some time off, but I was still like, it's not a big deal. Move on. What am I going to do? Just sit at home? And I couldn't see anyone because of COVID, and DC was so locked down. It wasn't like other parts of the country. I had so many people reach out because I told my church what happened, but one person came out and saw me that week. So I was doing a story on violent crime in DC. I believe it was in May, early June, on if it was going up or down. And so I pulled up I hadn't thought of it before now. I pulled up the police stats, this public, was looking at them, and was like, oh, I wonder if there's a pin where mine is. Of course there's going to be a pin. Right. So I look at where it shows the pin on the block. So they're always very specific. And I didn't see anything there. And I'm like, okay, let me double check the right month, the right charge, okay, with or without a firearm. Okay, like everything's good. And was like, it's still not there. So I checked my home address. I checked my previous home address. I checked my previous home address. And then I thought maybe they got the quadrant wrong. There's 4 of every location essentially in DC.
Mm-hmm.
So checking the other quadrants. I'm like, they forgot to put my crime on the map. So I emailed them like a Karen, right? But a nice Karen. I was like, I emailed the media spokesperson at the police department and said, hi, I'm a reporter, but I'm also a victim. I was confused. I didn't see my crime on this map, blah, blah, blah. And 2 weeks later, they wrote me back and said, we are only posting first-degree crimes on this map. Your crime was not first degree, therefore it's not on the map. And
Unbelievable.
Since then, yeah, so I sat with that. That was like, I've sat with this and lived with this for years, but particularly the first 2 years as we were still going to, everything was proceeding in court, it was just like, why are we proceeding with this if I don't even matter?
Right.
And then I'm trying in my head to be like, well, it wasn't a huge deal. I survived. Like, it could have been so much worse, and maybe I shouldn't think it's a big deal. And so this week I reached back out to the police and said, I'm trying to get answers on the crime stats. Are they still only reflective of first degree felonies, as I was told back in 2020? And they said they wouldn't give me an answer. And I said, back and forth. Would you just tell me if this is the case? And I said, fine, let's just look at sex abuse crimes, because that's what my charge for this guy was, the conviction. And they said, okay, in the case of sex, they wrote this in legalese, but then we explained it. First and some degree sex abuse charges are up on this map. That's what I came to. So then I said, well, what about every other degree felony? Oh, you'd have to look at them. You'd have to look at the stats. So I'm looking at the thing and I'm reading all the fine print. And I was like, I can't figure it out. So you'd almost need someone who is who's a victim of one of these other crimes
to be able to come in and say, oh, well.
Yeah, exactly. Because
right.
It's like, I'm just going to stick to saying for sex abuse, here's what they're doing now. So.
Well, and it seems, and I brought this up, it all started with CompStat on the public safety side, right? CompStat used to be this tool that started in, I think it was New York City under Bratton, where they would be able to focus on where the high crime is in an area and then be able to actually go in and do something about it, right? Allocate resources, change their approach. And then what CompStat has become is a meeting where people who are trying to get promoted said, well, we can get rid of this crime, we can get rid of this crime, we can get rid of this crime, so it looks like our crime number is going down. And for years, and 2 of my other partners on here, former law enforcement as well, people say, oh, that doesn't happen. I'm like, I've sat in meetings where I've heard chiefs say, well, should that really be classified as this? Or maybe we can classify it as that, because that's really what more happened. And yeah, it's a felony, but if you take 2 key elements out of the felony and charge them separately, it's 2 misdemeanors, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And people were saying that never happens. The country doesn't do that. The UCR is the UCR. And then the Marshall Report Foundation came out a couple of years ago and released a huge report on how half these cities don't even report crimes until well past the date. If they do report all of their crimes, some of them still don't even have software to report it properly to the federal government. And it shows you how easy it is to manipulate crimes and numbers. It's like any stat. You can make any stat say what you want to say. Anyone that's taken a simple statistics class knows that. And as we kind of brush into what's going on today with crime, and especially in the DC area, if anyone's picked up a newspaper in the last week, you'll see. Do you feel like that's what was going on here? That they were just filtering and burying and filtering and burying, so it doesn't show the true picture of what was going on in that city or what is going on in that city?
Yeah. And, writing my op-ed about this is an opinion piece, right? I've written thousands and thousands of objective news stories. This is my first opinion piece, right? It's scary to put my opinion out there. I still can't speak to why they did it, right? But I think the reason I came forward is, one, we can't fix something until we understand the extent of what the issue is. So on the crime map, as of yesterday, the past year, there were 54 sex abuses in DC for the year.
Right.
I'm like,
That math doesn't math.
Place. What a great place. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, just you're like, who, this, what a great place to live. So anyway,
don't trust your lying eyes. That's what we've seen time and again from a lot of these specifically soft on crime cities. They'll tell you, don't trust your lying eyes. I know what you see and I know what you know to be true, but here's a piece of paper that says you're wrong. So just believe that and let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I wanted people to know, first of all, my crime didn't count. And then second of all, sorry, it's been a long day.
I don't blame you. Please don't apologize.
Media lately. Second of all, he got released 5 times. So there's a court issue on the side. And COVID pandemic was part of that. I try to give the courts an excuse, but surely there's something better we could have done to protect him, protect the public, protect me. And so, that's why I'm stepping forward now. And people around President Trump have really brought this to his attention. Certainly there's the other side saying that this is part of how he's going to take over DC and then take over other cities and such. I get a lot of that feedback on Twitter under my tweets.
Of course.
Yeah. And I'm like, listen, and that's what's hard. It's like, I'm going to be covering this in the weeks and months ahead. And certainly, but as far as DC police and why they're not doing this, I haven't heard from them since the story went up, since the opinion piece went up.
Which is incredible. And DC police, for people who don't realize, so I've had to explain so many times on X and other places that Washington, D.C. is not its own state. It doesn't fall under the 10th Amendment. The federal government has the ability to do pretty much what they want to do when it comes to public safety. There's some caveats they have to follow, but they can have federal cops all over that city all day long. Ever since it was annexed from the residential portion was annexed from Maryland, that is just how it is. First of all, what I don't understand is the idea of being a city leader and saying, yes, crime is bad here, but don't help us with it. It's fine. Let's let that continue. That's okay. But we could have that whole argument on a separate point. What I find infuriating is DC leadership has had a history of problematic behavior for years. And I forget the chief that was fired, but he was the only honest chief who was like, hey, we really have a crime problem here and nobody wants to deal with it. And then all of a sudden, was it 2 months later, he was out of a job and they hired the next person. It does seem like the city council and the mayor, and this is not just DC, unless they find that chief who does what they want to do, it's become a completely political appointed position now. It's no longer what's in the best interest of the citizens, what's in the best interest of the politicians. And if you're not a lapdog, they get rid of you and they bring the next person in who will be the lapdog, who will downplay crime because that hurts their campaign. And I don't think enough people realize how prominent that is in all of these major cities, and DC is no exception.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing about that too is that you have a massive backing of people who are telling the mayor and the city council what needs to happen. So, and the people who are donating to the mayor and the city council, right? This is politics 101. So you have the DC tourism is massive, especially for taxes and generating revenue. They don't want these news stories that DC isn't safe. So they're going to be telling the mayor, you better fix this, but you better fix it quiet, or you better just make it not an issue. Mm-hmm. So that's what's going on behind the scenes. People don't want to, it's a very tough line to walk of like, we know we're addressing it, but also it's, when it's not, it's fine. It's good. I mean, look, I just walked down the street. It was fine. So, but that's the thing too, like Mayor Bowser, I want to say she's in her 3rd term now. I left DC 5 years ago. Haven't really paid a ton of attention to her lately, but it's true. Even members of Congress, they get chauffeured everywhere. Right. I would love to have that service. I'd love to have just a bodyguard coming out with my story right now. Mm-hmm. but they don't, how can you get a real understanding? And the first thing, when you meet someone at an event or something, they're probably not going to be like, my neighborhood's not safe. Nice to meet you, Mayor Bauer. They're going to be like, oh, Mayor, it's so, okay.
Well, and most of those people that get to go to those events, they already know, they're already chosen.
Yeah. Exactly.
You're seeing a lot on social media. DC residents, and one of my partners had a 47-year-old long DC resident on the other night who said, "This is great. I have never seen the city this quiet."
I didn't know. Oh, yeah, the city being yeah, people are happy. I mean, I'm seeing, like, I know plenty of journalists who are just quietly like, okay, well, yeah, I guess the homeless should get actual help. Why weren't we doing that before?
That is something, and I was working during the transition from, we have to do something legitimate with the homeless. If they commit a crime, they either have to get committed or go to jail. They don't just get to walk out in the street to victimize other people. And now I live on the West Coast in California, where it's just, there's nothing. There is literally nothing. And I say this all the time, and people don't understand the homeless community by and large. You have the advocates who are getting paid to say that they understand it, that never really truly understand it, because they stand 50 feet away and have a press conference. When you're dealing with the homeless, a lot of them want to be homeless. They don't want to live on the grid until it's time to get some sort of anything from the government for free. But a lot of them have severe mental illness. And you're trusting people who you can't be trusted to tie their shoes on a regular basis, to check in and get the medication they need daily, weekly, monthly, in order to not have a severe mental illness. And all it takes is 1 or 2 bad days of them not showing up where they're supposed to show up and get checked, treated, medicated, for them to go out and have an episode where they are now victimizing other people and or harming themselves.
Yeah. You don't think
Which
of that.
is a huge issue that needs to be dealt with. They talk about, oh, it's inhumane to jail people and this and that. It's inhumane to let somebody be so mentally in crisis that they're walking down train tracks while drinking a Kool-Aid and acting like it's a regular Tuesday. And then when they get run over, everyone says, well, why didn't they help them?
Yeah.
And that, like you said, the animal who attacked you, which I can say all day long.
I'm gonna say, but he's a person. Like, and that's been really hard for me, because he is a person.
Right.
He hurt me, and I don't know what he was going to keep doing, but
you are too.
as a woman too. Oh, even as a woman, and getting a firearm afterward when I moved to Texas. Like, I haven't found a man yet who's understood, which, no offense to men, we're all made differently, but women are like, I know I can't get a gun. I want to defend myself, but I can't find the right, because even though someone might be hurting you, it's like, anyway, but let's get back to the homeless issue, because I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, I agree. How can we, like, truly, if we care, and it's such a wrestle back and forth, especially living in DC, it was like, people everywhere. It's like a nuisance, right? You get used to it. And you don't want to get used to it, but you just do, because it's there. And this guy, when he was attacking me, he started screaming louder than me. He was screaming, they're trying to kill me. And so I immediately knew, I'm not dealing with the normal person.
Right.
My thought was like, okay, my first thought was, this guy's on meth. I don't know why that was my first thought. But
probably was. That's a fair assessment.
I was like, okay, so this guy might be crazy, super strong right now. So I need to tread lightly. The thoughts you have in this, very quickly.
Yeah. It's all about self-preservation, I would guess, at that point.
Yeah. And so, I think you're right. Like, what do we do with, because he's getting back out, and at the sentencing, he said sorry. I told him I forgave him. But I want what's best for him. I really do. I want to see him better. And yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the question to me becomes, is letting them out to be homeless and fall right back into the same pattern that they were in the best thing for him and potential other victims? And like you said, you're so gracious to be concerned about his well-being. That says so much about who you are as a person, and I applaud you for that. Having dealt with so many victims from people of who from homeless, right, who have victimized the innocent people walking down the street and robbed them, attacked them, and horrific other crimes, you start to say, well, all of them need to be dealt with, yes, and they need to be treated like people 100%, but we need to protect the victims or the potential victims more so. The kids walking down the street. When you're driving down the street in Sacramento, if you drive down Folsom Boulevard, which is a large street down here, you will pass no less than 15 to 20 homeless people walking down either the sidewalk, the middle of the street, shirts off, one shoe off, scream at the top of their lungs. And that's in the Fab 40s. That's in one of the richest parts of the city. And it's like, there are kids that come and going to school, who are riding their bikes to school or coming home or playing in their front yard. And these homeless individuals are just rolling up on their front yard and laying down and lighting up a meth pipe like it's their house.
Yeah.
At some point, we need to deal with that in a realistic way and not just doing what California did, which is we're going to deal with homelessness and we're going to give a whole bunch of money to NGOs who hire people at $500,000 a year, and then nothing gets accomplished, but all of that money is spent. Mm-hmm. Because I think the victims like you and potential victims deserve that just as much as the homeless themselves do. So I'm sorry, I went on a rant. I apologize.
Yeah, I agree, because when my attacker has been released from prison, and I sure hope he's better now. But
yeah.
what is the reality? Probably not.
Percentage is low.
Yeah.
The percentage is very low. So you are writing a book, first and foremost, for you to speak out, because I can only imagine how difficult this was for you. I can only imagine how you felt even today. Like you just brought up, buying a firearm to protect yourself, and how that's sometimes a really rough decision for women more than men, right? I can't put myself in your shoes. I can't claim to even begin to understand that. Any portion of it, I've been punched in the face and kicked, and I've had people try to stab me, but it's a different mentality. Mm-hmm. They weren't trying to attack me for me. They were trying to attack me because I was trying to bring them to jail or stop them from doing something that they didn't want to get stopped doing. So for you to come out and speak about this, to be able to highlight this, not only for yourself, but I'm sure there are other women out there right now who are very, very thankful for you bringing this to the forefront, because they've probably had a similar situation. What do you say to other people who are going through this? And I mean, you're honestly, I to come out how you did and to come out with the detail you did and what you faced and everything. What do you say to those other women right now who are maybe going through this or have gone through this, and how to kind of move forward with that? Because I think that that's something that's unbelievably important.
Yeah. I wrote the book to be the book I wanted when I was going through this, not just in the days after, but in the years after. Because I planned to be in DC for decades. I was saving up to buy a condo, an overpriced condo, but anyway. I have to laugh because it's just who I am. And,
That's great. I think that's huge.
So, I have life plans in DC, right? So this all gets disrupted. And that's what it is. You're thinking, can I still move forward with my life here? And then the city just shows you over and over again, no, you can't. You don't feel like you even belong in your home anymore. And I think that's one of the hardest parts. I say this carefully, right? Because I cover immigration, but it was my first chance to feel a little of what refugees feel like leaving their homes, like leaving their countries. I put everything in storage. I mean, I didn't even have a car. I had to rent a car, drive my cat down to my parents out of state, and said, I'm just going to crash here, and then I'm going to figure out where to move in the country for 6 months. The company's going to let me work remotely in Miami. I'm going to live on the beach and just be in a better place. And that didn't end up working out. So I went to Texas because I had family there. And then the Biden border crisis happened, and that oddly worked out well for my job. But that's the hardest part is it wasn't the attack. It was the months and years after. I went through horrible, severe depression and anxiety. I've dealt with anxiety here and there. But I remember right after Christmas one year, I was thinking about suicide. And
I'm sorry.
And over and over, yeah, I haven't cried yet. Over and over it would come because you just feel like your life has been, this isn't what I signed up for. And then it's, did I make too big of a deal? Maybe it wasn't a big deal what happened to me. Maybe I just like overhyped it. It's okay. Like, I wish I'd never gone forth with this case. I wish that we weren't prosecuting. I mean, I went that way for like a full few months. Like, this was stupid to do. I'm just dragging this out, torturing myself. I would say this. So that is the mentality that I wrote everything in. I wrote this book starting last year, and I'm finishing it now. I've got 9 chapters done, and I've sort of been waiting to finish because what is the ending? You know, how do you wrap this up? And I'm kind of figuring that out now. I wrote it because I was like, I want to know someone who's been through a U.S. attorney prosecution. What does working with the police look like? What does any of this look like? Are my thoughts normal? Like, am I overreacting? No. Is it weird that I feel like my parents don't understand how much this bothers me? Like, is it weird that, you know, like you're just even, you know, today talking to one of my parents who won't watch this podcast, thank goodness. My dad was like, oh, you're getting a lot of traction online. That's good. And I said, it's making me uncomfortable.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, just remember you're the same you. And I was like, everybody says I'm, what's the word everyone keeps using? Oh, I'm not fearless. You're so brave.
Right.
You're so brave. And I said to Dad, I don't understand why people keep telling me this. Like, I truly don't. He said, well, you fought in the attack and you got out. And I said, but that wasn't bravery. I'm not brave. Like, I barely made it through this. And yeah. And I said, it feels there's the rightness in me that wants to turn around and tell the public, well, I don't know if brave is the right choice. I just survived. I just got through it. I literally had to take it minute by minute sometimes. And I just made it through. And I would say to someone, I'm eventually going to answer your question.
Take your time.
I had to decide the day of the attack. I was on the floor in my apartment and I was crying out to God. And I said, I'm going to choose to live no matter what happens next. I'm going to choose because I knew what was coming, the trial, what all that would entail. I've been around law enforcement enough to know it's not pretty. Would be worse than the attack probably. And I just resolved that day, I'm going to get through this. I believe in Jesus Christ. He's been my rock. I can't imagine. It's my faith and the hope I have through my faith. That was ultimately, it wasn't family and friends. It was certainly a huge part, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was that kept me going.
Could I interject for a moment?
Yeah.
And you just answered your own question. That's what makes you brave, right? You chose in that moment and it obviously was not easy. And there's so many valleys and mountains that went between that you either had to climb or forge. But the fact that you're here now, the fact that you made the decision to continue, the fact that you've clearly kept going with who you are in your career, you clearly kept achieving goals, you clearly kept moving forward. You know, you in the law enforcement world, we call it staying in the fight, right? You stayed in that fight. You stayed in the fight in the moment, you stayed in the fight after the fact, and you're still staying in the fight now. And you didn't give up. When who would have blamed you if you did, right? Because of what you've been through. And I say this with a lot of other victims as well. I can't blame a victim for acting as a victim, and there's no black and white checkbox for how a victim should act.
Yeah.
You go through what you go through and process it the way you have to process it to try to be okay, if that is at all possible. So that's what actually makes you brave.
Mm.
You chose to be you. You chose to fight forward. You found a place you were comfortable. You found a place that you could get up every day and put your feet on the ground. You found a place where you clearly do good at your job, and you clearly enjoy your job, and you clearly have, it looks like fun doing your job, right? It's a lot of work and it's a lot of perseverance, but you do all of that while you've had this internal struggle, and you keep winning that internal struggle. And I believe you will continue to keep winning that internal struggle. And I will say that it is an honor for me to be able to discuss this with you. It is an honor for me to be here, and let you tell your story, because this is something, again, I can't even begin to understand how personal this is. But it is. And for you to share that part, that's another step of your bravery. You're telling this for other people, so this will be a story that other people can read and understand and watch, and maybe have that motivation of, I need to keep going too. So you're doing all of those things. So when you ask why people keep saying that you're brave, you answered your own question.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't think of it that way.
Hey, every once in a while I'm right. So this is my one for the day. I probably won't be right for the rest of the day, and I'm okay with that.
I got dad jokes too. So
I'm a dad. I have to have dad jokes.
I've got dad jokes, and then people look at me weird. I'm like, well,
No, it's awesome. Dad jokes, I think, are the most vastly underrated comedic sphere that
my cats all the time, and they're like laughing at herself again. Yeah.
No, I laugh at myself all the time. I'm fortunate that one of my best friends lives next door, and every once in a while he'll be in the shared driveway, and he'll be like, "Are you talking to me?" And I'm like, "I really wish I was right then, but you got me. I'm just complaining about stupid things in life."
Yeah.
So the book, how close to completion is it, and when can we see it?
I'd love to tell you those things. I'm trying to figure that out, right? It was the right moment for me. I knew I've been looking at agents, literary agents. The way it works is you find an agent. They're going to know, okay, this publisher, this editor would be good to work with. They're going to work with you on you get a book deal. Hopefully you can find an agent, which is hard enough in itself. Hopefully then you can find a publisher and get some sort of book deal. Unless you're a major author, you're not going to get,
right.
You're not going to make a living. So when people accuse me of that, I'm like, that's super cute. Thank you. I'm
flattered. That would be amazing, right?
All of this just to get a book. Yeah, that's why I always say, like, truly, this book is probably going to I think it's great, but it's not like action packed. It's just how I survived, and how maybe others can learn as they're surviving how to do it.
And better. Just to see that it's possible.
Just to see it's possible. Exactly. So, right now I'm getting, a lot of traction online. And so I need to finish the book. Someone asked me today, and actually an editor at a big publishing house, to send over my manuscript. So
fantastic.
Yeah. So things are coming along. We'll see. I will certainly keep everyone posted on Twitter. I apologize. My last name is a nightmare. Every time I go on TV, it's like, where can we find you? And I'm like, well, Google my name and then just go to X, or Washington.
You're the only Anna Giaritelli that I can find on anywhere. So
in the world. Yeah.
And the funniest part is I hacked your name at the very beginning. The first time I can remember saying it to myself, because you've done interviews, you know how it is. You prep yourself and you make sure, hey, don't screw this up, don't screw that up. And I was like, oh, Giaritelli, I'm from the Northeast. That's not a hard name for me to pronounce.
Yeah, my dad's from Brooklyn. He came over from, I think, in the 1910s from Italy. So yeah.
So I saw it. I was like, great. And then as we opened the interview, I absolutely jacked it up. And all of my friends are going to give me hell about that from here on out. So it'll be fun for that. So a book's coming out. Your story is just amazing. And you have just been so wonderful and gracious with your time. We agreed to 20 minutes and you've stayed to 40. So I cannot thank you enough. Having said that, tell everybody a little bit about your work at the Examiner, what you do, where you started from, because on top of just this story, you're a pretty intrepid reporter as well. You've done 60 border trips, you've covered crime, you've covered all of this stuff. So plug yourself a little bit, please.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a fun ride. I interned in DC in 2010 as a senior in college. I went to Asbury University, which was the school that had a revival that kind of brought it some attention. So anyway, great school, great media school. And moved back to DC 2013, joined my company 2015. So October makes 10 years with Washington Examiner, which in DC
is a lifetime.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, this is weird. I get like a Tiffany bracelet on the 10th anniversary.
Make sure they give you one.
They've been really good to me. They've let me work remote and let me take time off as needed. So, but I cover Homeland Security, so everything that entails. And really, when President Biden took office, and the numbers at the border, people crossing, rose astronomically. We were seeing about 30 to 50,000 people arrested at the border every month for the past several decades. It's
right.
Right? The biggest month under Biden was December 2023. It was about 249,000 people. And
unbelievable.
And I never thought I would see over 100,000 in my life, like as a reporter. It was like, all right, wow, 70,000 a month. That's a big month. This was, it's still just, and being on the border, witnessing it is just, and then knowing everyone is just fanned out across the country. It's like, it's mind blowing.
Well, and it's funny because when we're having the whole, I'm sure the gerrymandering fight between Texas and California right now. And I said, how come nobody's talking about how gerrymandered every state is going to be because of the 10 to however many millions that flooded in and were caught and released? And that will be counted in the census. Like that alone was a massive gerrymandering scheme. So as a border reporter, to just watch that happen, and you knew what the numbers were, and then all of a sudden you're in the middle of all of this where there's 210,000 people.
39,000 in 1 month. And that's just who was apprehended.
Right. That's not including the gotaways.
Gotaways were like people who get away. Yeah.
Or the special interest aliens that nobody wanted to talk about that. And did you just feel like, are we living in a movie right now? Is this even real?
It did. And then it just gets old because it's like this every month. And you're like, and then it's just, okay, new story this month. The border numbers are higher. The border numbers are higher now. And here's all the fallout. I still feel like it didn't get enough attention that it deserved. And maybe that's because so many big outlets weren't doing it justice. Because there's 1,000 ways. Immigration, when people come over the border, that's not just a border story. I was doing stories on how are schools being impacted from certain areas where you're seeing a lot of people released and moving to, and all the kids are going into school. And they don't even have teachers that speak certain dialects of Spanish to help these kids. And then they're grades behind. Like enormous impacts. And for context now, last month, July, less than 5,000 people were apprehended at the southern border.
Yeah, which is just unbelievable to think that the change. That's turning off the spigot. It's
shocking. And so really under, Biden, Texas was the big leader in the fight against Biden. It had its border being crossed by so many people. Now Florida's leading this fight, and we're starting to see Oklahoma, Indiana, Tennessee jump in and help. But the focus of the Trump administration is not the exterior of the country, but the interior of the country. And so I have massive border patrol contacts around the country. Unfortunately, they're on the exterior of the country. I have ICE contacts, but it was, now you got to build that up again. And so we've been going out with ICE. We broke the story we were down in Florida for a couple weeks, and saw that ICE was, Florida was paying for people in custody, in state custody or border patrol custody, to be flown back to their home country. So Florida taxpayers are actually paying for that.
Which is just amazing.
It's like, you're just, as soon as I heard someone mention it and he wasn't supposed to say it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is a huge story. So,
and this is modern America. This is what I keep telling people. Like, Do you understand how insane it is that this is clearly should be a federal issue, and you now have states who are trying to deal with it essentially on their own, and they're getting more help from other states than they are from the federal government up until January?
Yeah.
Where now it's obviously increased, but you're also, you know, you're 10 feet down in the hole, and you need to somehow get back up. I mean, that's the other thing that people, I don't think, quite comprehend is we could be deporting and removing people all the live long day, but the numbers of people who potentially came over the border, that it's going to be an impossible task. And that doesn't include all of the other aspects that go along with it, the politics, the money, the having the actual force, the manpower, so to speak, to be able to perform that. ICE is hiring an incredible number of people right now, and they're taking anyone that they can who will pass the background check. And I don't blame them, because, you know, there's where they have to make this up as they go, because there was no game plan for this. So they're starting from scratch essentially, and just seeing what works and what doesn't work. And there's going to be times it doesn't work, unfortunately.
Yeah. And if people think ICE is working now, I'm going down next week to where ICE trains its recruits, or it's people who have officially accepted the job, to see what that is like. And that's going to be really interesting, because a 6 months from now, a year from now, oh my goodness, it's going to be.
Are you going to Alabama or Georgia?
It's Georgia.
Yeah, Fletzy.
Yep, Fletzy. Yep. It's going to be. Yeah, we're going to look back and be like, they weren't even doing anything in 2024. They were barely, And I think the Trump administration stays quiet because they know, you can criticize us. That's fine. We know what's coming. So, yeah.
And it has to happen. And, I've said this on my show numerous times, is you have to be able to separate, if you're going to try to logically solve this, the emotional from the logical and literal, right? Are there a lot of good people that float over the border illegally? 100%. I'm not saying that any of them are bad people, except for probably 1% to 3%. But when you start talking about 10 million plus, that 1% to 3% number is huge. In what are we, 317 million people in our country or something like that, right? That's a huge percentage.
Yeah.
And they're all, a vast majority of the bad people, the gang members and all that, they all have contacts that have already been working to bring stuff back. You're only making it worse. Yeah. So you need to separate the emotional from the logical and the literal. We need to try to get back to net zero as close to possible. And, for me, anyone that wants to come to this country and do it the right way and be absolutely rich and famous and live there by its life, come on in. The water's fine. I applaud it. I think it's great.
Water's not fine, but
well, all right. The edge of the pool is fine. The water can be a little sketchy sometimes.
Yeah.
But my point is I don't think anybody is against proper immigration. I think, barring a few screwballs in the world, and they're all out there, but the problem is, the Biden administration made such a mockery of our immigration system now that it is completely dysfunctional or broken. And the only way I think you can logically forge forward with it is to try to get as close to reset as possible and start again slowly.
Yeah. It's going to be.
Oh,
I'm waiting.
I can't imagine.
A massive, like during COVID, there were so many people that came over when nations started lifting their travel restrictions, in addition to the Biden effect. But is that going to happen in 2029? And, I've seen this Trump administration, they're putting policies in place. I have a story coming out this weekend about one way they're trying to make sure that families cannot be released out of custody by ICE. And right now they can only be detained 20 days. And they want to keep people in custody because otherwise that acts as an incentive, the Trump administration says, for people to come across knowing they're going to get released. So they're putting things in place now, not just for after Trump leaves office, but
beyond.
For what happens tomorrow, what could happen tomorrow?
Well, and you look at it and people say, oh, this stuff is an incentive. Imagine if you come to the country, or you're trying to get into the country, You've come through the Central America, you've come through Mexico, been living potentially a very hard life during your travels. I mean, they have cell phones and Gatorades and stuff, which is sometimes amazing to me that it's like you don't have any money whatsoever, but you can 5G all day long. Great. But then you get here and the federal government says, you know what, the next 20 days, we're going to feed you, we're going to house you, we're going to make sure you're healthy, and then we're going to let you out into the country. You're right. That is an incentive, right? Because you're like, oh, my kid's going to have food. They're going to have at least a place to sleep that's safer than the streets. And they're getting medical attention. So, yeah, why would you not want that as the midway step to being let go into the country to do? And then never mind a lot of the benefits that they were receiving once they get into the country. So, I mean, I don't have all of the answers. I don't think you have all the answers. I don't know if anyone has all the answers, to be honest with you, but we have to do something. We can't just keep going down the path that we're on.
Yeah, I agree.
So I look forward to the book. I look forward to your reporting. And will you come back and talk to us a little bit about the border specifically?
Yeah, anytime.
Where I can be a little bit more lighthearted myself and sarcastic, and you can make fun of me all you want, and that would be great.
Yeah. Anytime you see a story, you just reach out. Yeah.
I really appreciate your time, and tell everyone where they can find you on social media, please.
So since my name is on screen, you should write it down now or type it in. But I'm on X or Twitter, Anna_Giaritelli. And that's where, that's the only social media I use publicly. And then if you want to read my stories, unfortunately, they are behind a paywall, but that is what keeps the Washington Examiner in business. It's only a few bucks a month. And then you'll get full access. And my op-ed is actually not behind a paywall. We made sure that it was public.
That was awesome for them to do.
Yeah, I really appreciated the company doing that.
It sounds like they do a really good job of taking care of their employees. And I think that says a lot about an organization. I think that's awesome. So credit to them, and obviously credit to you as well. Anna Giaritelli, thank you so much for sharing your story and spending time with us today.
Thanks so much, Sean.
Thank you.